Good evening and welcome to another edition of Kicking It with Soul. Tonight we're going to kick off our new series. It is called the Psalty Psalm series, where we're going to walk through with me basically kicking it with the Psalms. I read pretty much try to go through Psalms 1 through 33 each day, each morning as I can. And I'm going to just walk you guys through them with me and go through them and tell you guys what I think when I'm reading it, what I think of the scriptures. We're going to go through one every broadcast. We're going to go live on Sabbath evenings, 9 o'clock Eastern, as you guys know. And we're going to first take an overview of David, and then we're going to go through Psalms number 1. So we're going to try to get a little formulaic, and we'll start, each one of these will be like fireside chats. So you're going to just be kicking it with soul, Sabbath with soul. And our first series is going to be salty Psalms. So you're going to get a little sweet and salty with the Soul Maiden and just see what I think as I roll through the Psalms myself on a personal day to day. Okay? So we're going to try to get each one of these broadcasts started with a little prayer. I'm not super religious. Anybody who knows me know I'm not super religious, but I'm going to tell you guys the number one point of this channel, the number one point of starting this, the number one point of doing these broadcasts. We're going to be dedicated to the fall of Babylon. And that's just straight out what it is. We're dedicated to the fall of Babylon. We're dedicated to the rise of Yah and Yah's people, and everything that we do is going to be towards that end. Okay, so we're going to say a little prayer. I have a prayer that I pretty much try to start all out my meditations, my prayerful times, my conversations with the Lord, and it goes as follows. I say, Shema, that is here, that is here. Shema Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. Amen. And in the Hebrew community where I learned, we say that in Hebrew, and we close with a Hebrew prayer as well. So we'll dig into all that a little bit more. But for now, this evening, we're going to say, blessed be the name of the Lord, God of Israel. We thank you and we praise you for bringing us forth once more to bless and praise your name. We thank you for everything that you've done, everything you are doing, and everything that you will do. We just thank you and praise you, oh merciful, merciful God. And, in the words of the venerated reggae singer Everton Blender, we're going to lift our heads up to the Most High. We're going to lift our heads and hold them up high because we know that we win the fight, okay? Lift up your head, hold them up high. You know that you win the fight. So, in this channel, we're not going to come hard and fast. We're just going to give it to them slow. We're going to stick it to them and stick it to them slow because, that's how we do best. Real G's move in silence like lasagna, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to get started our discussion as we dig into the salty Psalms, getting sweet and salty. We're going to talk about David. We're going to just do a quick overview. The time will come and you guys can let me know if you want to dig any deeper into David. But as we dig into the Psalms, we're just going to do a quick overview of David. David the shepherd, David the soldier, David the outlaw, David the mercenary, the king, the killer, servant, legend, icon. And I'm not gonna, dig too deep tonight because we want to get straight to it. And as you guys know, that I am a fan of keeping the videos, um, you know, as short as necessary, but as long as needed. Okay, so number one, I'm going to try to do some voice projection and make sure that you guys can hear me clearly. So until I get my microphone, we're going to do these as fireside chats. You heard? So David, considered the second king of ancient Israel, because as we all know, Saul was the first king of Israel. Israel didn't have an earthly king because Yah was their king, and they decided that they was going to take it upon themselves to ask for a king. And if my memory serves me correctly, God was not too pleased with that at the time. Now, I'm going to let y'all know that we still have those kings over us today. We asked for them, and now we got them, and they're still ruling over us at this time. But as many of us know, their time is coming to an end. You know, tick tock, tick tock. Okay. David, as we may or may not know, I'm going to try not to use generalities and just stick to the facts. So David, he was the youngest of all his brothers and sisters. He was a shepherd. You know, he took care of the flock. And the way the Bible really put it is like he was by himself a lot of the time. Okay. He was out there. He very early on kind of like started writing and documenting, you know. And so we know that him as a child, he was in love with the Lord. And he was also very valiant as a child because, you know, he fought, you know, off prey, you know, that was trying to attack his father's flock. Okay. So David, as a young man, he was not a punk, okay? He wasn't really no punk when he was young, you know? So, you know, they say punks jump up to get beat down, but David was not that, okay? David killed a lion and a bear, okay, when he was young, all right? So he really wasn't no joke. So he comes along now, and the prophet was on the way to kind of name a king, all right? And y'all got to forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the prophet Nathan, okay? The prophet Nathan was like, yo, let me just, you know, God sent him to go and find somebody, go to the house of Jesse and name this person king, okay? And because David had brothers that was like, had more suave than him, like he had brothers that was way more smooth than him, like bigger than him, taller than him, with more prowess than him. So nobody didn't really think that he would. Actually, it wasn't Nathan, y'all forgive me, it was Samuel. It was Samuel that anointed David, right? So, you know, nobody didn't really expect that David was going to be the one. Like all the other brothers was like stepping up thinking that they was going to be the one, and it wasn't really them. Like they dad Jesse like was bringing out all his sons, and Samuel just kept being like, no, that's not the one, that's not the one. And finally, Samuel was like, no, none of these is one. Like 7 of the sons came through. And then Samuel was just like, is this all your sons? And then Jesse was like, well, the youngest is around here, but he just be keeping the sheep. So Samuel was like, you need to go get him because we not gonna, this not gonna be done until I see all the sons. So this one get here. So they went and got him. And the Bible say that he was, basically the Bible said David was fine, to be honest. He said, the Bible say he was ruddy. which means he had like color in his cheeks. He was like good stock. He had beautiful eyes and he was handsome. And the Lord told Samuel right then and there, that's the one. And so Samuel then anointed him. And the Bible say from that day, the Spirit of the Lord rests real heavy on David. Okay. So David now comes from being a shepherd, and at the pretty much the way the Bible put it, at the same time that the Spirit of the Lord rested heavy on David, the Spirit of the Lord left Saul, who was the first king. Now, if y'all want me to do a fireside chat to kick it about Saul, we can do that, because he was pretty salty as well. Okay, super salty. So Saul actually ended up getting tormented because he had did some stuff he wasn't supposed to do either, but we're not going to go off track. If y'all wanted me to do one on it, then leave a comment, okay? So basically they was like, yo, something is really tormenting you. So Saul was like, you know who I need somebody who's going to come here and play some music. Now, we definitely going to get into the effects of music on this channel. I got plenty to say about that, but check this. He was like, you know what? If somebody could play some real fly music that could really chase this demon away that's bothering me, this harmful spirit that's bothering me. I'm not going to say demon because the Bible say the Lord put this harmful spirit on him. Because we know if you're in disobedience, it's open market. God could release something on you, or the devil, Hasatan. It don't really matter. It could come from either direction, okay? So Saul was like, yo, yeah, send me somebody that could play real dope. And one of his men was like, I know somebody. So he went and got David. Dun, 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 okay? They was like, we know somebody. He could play. He is an honest man. He a man of war. He got good words. He good with his words. He just pretty much that all around cat. The God is really with him. They told Saul this. So Saul was like, yo, sent a message to Jesse, send me your son, the one who be with the sheep. So basically Jesse was like, all right. He took a donkey, threw some bread on it, some wine on it, put a young goat on it, and sent David with it. And David, from then on, he went into service to the king. And the king, Saul, fell in love with David big time and made him his armor bearer. So armor bearer, that's just what it sounded like. David was responsible for carrying Saul's armor. And in modern times, an armor bearer, it'll be somebody who just be like your right-hand man, your lieutenant. They basically right next to you, okay? They carrying your armor. Hello, basically, they could get at you, okay? Because when you around them, like you don't have your armor on. So this is how close David got to him, okay? So Saul just straight up fell in love with him. And whenever David played his music, every time David played his music, the harmful spirit left from the king, okay? So right then and there, David pretty much proved his worth. He got anointed of the Lord, okay? At this time, I don't think everybody put 2 and 2 together that this is who is about to be the new king. But just like a good telenovela, David ends up right in service to Saul, okay? So right now he in the camp. He basically in there. Your second-hand man, like this is like Nino Brown and G Money, okay? So all of a sudden now, Israel got to go to war with the Philistines, okay? So the Philistines was like a race of giants, okay? We got physical evidence that they existed even right now to this day, all right? The Philistines, they come gathering up, so they want to go to war with Israel, okay? Now, their greatest warrior was Goliath. Mad big, mad tall, mad mean. He was like pretty big, okay? Like, y'all already know what time it is with Goliath, okay? So basically, he was like, y'all done gathered up, but y'all don't got nobody who even stepping up to fight me. Like, okay, like, y'all whole army don't even want to come against me and my people, and y'all don't even want to come against me. So aren't y'all Saul boys? Like, aren't y'all supposed to be busting? What's up? Okay. So he was like, at least just choose one man. Out of all y'all whole army, just choose one dude who y'all think could come and fight and kill me. Then if y'all kill me, my whole camp gonna be our servants. But if I kill them, then it's vice versa. Okay, y'all gonna have to serve us. So he threw down the gauntlet. He was like, just give me one man. So Israel was pretty shook. Okay, Saul, the king himself, was shook. Israel was shook. They didn't have not one dude that they could send down, okay, to fight against Goliath. So all of a sudden, David got wind of this. And David was like, I'ma go. You know what I mean? David was like, if nobody ain't gonna step up, I'ma just do it. Okay? Everybody jetted. Nobody was willing to fight Goliath. So Saul got wind of it that David wanted to do it, and Saul was like, nah, you can't go up against him. You just a kid still. But did Saul know that David had already killed a lion and a bear? You know what I mean? David had to put him up on game, and David was like, in case you didn't know, okay, I used to keep sheep for my dad, and whenever a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him. So, like, David didn't even give a care, a good gosh dang, if the lion or the bear already had his father's sheep in his mouth. Okay, he could have went back home and been like, yo, pops, a lion or a bear got one of the sheep and a lamb, and I couldn't do it. Okay, nah, David went after him, killed it, and took the lamb out the bear mouth and out the lion mouth. Okay, so David pretty much was like, I done been struck down by lions and bears. So this uncircumcised heathen, basically, is what David pretty much was saying. This uncircumcised heathen gonna be just like that. Again, punks jump up to get beat down. David didn't even care. He wasn't having it, okay? Because this heathen had the nerve to defy the armies of the living God. And now that's a note. We need to understand who we are. We need to understand what we are. And we need to understand what time it is. Okay? An uncircumcised Philistine heathen, and you could overlay that in today's society and figure out who that would be, that has defied the armies of the living God. It should be nothing to us. We should step up like David. Even if the whole nation of Israel cowered back, we should step up. Okay? So Saul told him, just go ahead. Just, if you got it, you got it. Young G, I'm not going to stand in your way. So Saul put his armor on David. You know, David strapped up. And David couldn't even manage the armor. He was like, I ain't even never test this out, so I can't. David was like, you could give me your armor, but I can't rock with this armor. Like, it's not even in me. This is not me. So that's another note for us. Fight with the equipment that God gave you. If God equip you to where you don't even gotta be flexing in a way that's not you, don't do it, because that'll trip you up. So when David even tested the armor at first, he was like, I don't even need this. Okay, So David took them off. But what he was used to fighting with, what he had in his hand, he had his staff. And he went and he got 5 stones from a brook. That's like a little stream. And he put them in his shepherd pouch, and he had his sling. And he stepped up to the Philistine, and he told them straight up, he coming at him. But Goliath looked at him and pretty much laughed and was like, yo, y'all take me for some kind of dog? That y'all gonna send this little young cat to me with a stick? You know what I mean? And he pretty much cursed David. And he was like, if you come at me, I'm gonna tear you pretty much from limb to limb. And David was like, you coming at me with a sword, but I'm coming at you in the name of the Lord God of Israel. And this day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. So the Philistine pretty much came at David. David ran up to him, ran up to the battle line. David pulled out one of his stones, slung it, struck him straight in the head. Straight in the middle of the forehead. Now for my esoterics out there who say that the Bible is all psychological, we could point to something right here. That stone hit Goliath right in the middle of his head. And what's in the middle of our head? It's our pineal gland, aka third eye. So here's David, aka the little guy, aka the underdog, aka House of Judah, fighting the Goliath just like we are right now. You see where he hit him? So David pretty much knocked him out. He fell on his face, straight up, bim bam bip. All right? So David did exactly what he said he was going to do. He took Goliath's own sword and cut off his head with it. You understand? And that's what you got to do when you kill him. When you knock him out, you got to do it with their own sword. See, that's why it's time to coat the airwaves. That's why it's time to come out and have fireside chats when you thought you never would, could, should. Take their own weaponry and kill them with it. So, when Saul saw that David really went at this cat like this, Saul was like, yo, who is this dude? Like, this dude just not no little music player, okay? And, they kind of took David in real deep, and David became best friends with Saul's son, Jonathan. Like the Bible say, their souls was knit together, so they was like blood brothers, okay? And I've had this happen even in my own life. Like, you might have a friend, but then if you get real close to their child or their sibling or something like that, then they get real salty with you, okay? And it's not really nothing you could do about it, but it really happens. And sometimes you got to temper your relationships, like, to make sure you balance that. But it was King Saul that took David in, didn't let him go back to his dad's house. And Jonathan and David became blood brothers. You know what I mean? Jonathan took off his own princely robe and put it on David, okay? And his sword and everything. So David started to go out on campaigns. Wherever Saul sent David to war, so now we had David the soldier. Wherever Saul sent David to war, David ripped it. He killed whoever. And every time he came back, he was getting more and more popular. And Saul didn't like that. So one time when David came back, and all the women of Israel came out in the streets, and they were singing and dancing. And they were supposedly out there to meet King Saul, but when they started singing with their tambourines and their instruments, they said Saul has killed thousands, but David killed 10,000s. You talk about salty and shady. Oh, honey. That was a moment that would even eclipse the Real Housewives of Atlanta, honey. Okay, this don't even got nothing on Nene in them. Saul had struck down his thousands and David his 10,000s. Now the king is coming home from war. The women is out in the streets dancing with instruments and singing and praising another dude. So Saul got super salty and he was like, how they gonna say David done killed 10,000s and me with thousands? Like what next? He gonna be like, what else is for him to have but my throne? So ever the Bible literally says, okay, if y'all think I'm even exaggerating, this is 1 Samuel 18, right? If you look at verse 9, the Bible literally say, and saw I David from that day on. That literally means Saul gave David the side eye from there on. I mean, what else do you do? I mean, like, you already see this man coming for the throne. So, of course, because he put that salty eye on David, and this is what be happening. You could be salty against a child of Yah if you want to, but you need to be a little bit careful with that. You need to be a lot careful with that, okay? If you set your sights on a child of Yah, you make a mistake. Inevitably. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but you're making a mistake, okay? Because in the very next chapter, verse 10, it say the next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul. It didn't even wait. It rushed. Okay? So David tried to come in flexing like he normally do, even though he's a big soldier now, even though the people are screaming his name in the streets, he's still keeping it humble, and Saul going off the deep end right now. So he coming into play like he did every day. But this day, Saul had his spear in his hand. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to pin this tail to the wall. He tried to pin David to the wall twice with his spear. But he missed. David, got out of it quick. You heard? So then Saul really knew he was out of gas, because right then now he know that God is with David. God is not with him no more. So what he did, he just got David out of his house. Okay, he made David jet, and he just get out of here. He made him like a big captain, and he just told him just get out his house and take you and all your stuff with you. But all of Israel and all of Judah loved David because he kept everything 100 with them. The Bible says he went out and came in before them, so he was a man of the people. Okay? And then he even was like, Saul just was like, even just take my daughter. You know what I mean? Just take my daughter. And Saul wanted to give him his oldest daughter, but then she had to go to somebody else. But David was like, nah, I'm not nobody. I'm not nobody that I should be your son-in-law. You know what I'm saying? But Saul did have a daughter that was really in love with David. Her name was Michal. So once Saul found out about that, Saul was like, all right, you can marry her. But it was like a setup. Saul was trying to set David up in a way. We could dig more into it, but pretty much everything Saul tried to do, God just made David get out of it. So he tried to do all kind of manner of ridiculous things. It's just so ridiculous what he tried to do, but he tried to set David up a lot of ways. So David just pretty much ultimately ended up on the run because Saul really tried to kill him multiple more times. Okay, so David just had to jet out. David ended up staying in some caves and stuff. He even had to go back to Samuel, the same prophet that anointed him, and he told Samuel everything like that Saul had did to him. So Samuel kind of like had to like put him away so that he could like be hid, and David really went through like a lot of hard times, but he ended up being like a real soldier, like a real mercenary. He killed like so many men. um Jonathan even had to try to warn him that it was a plot for him. Like it was multiple times. Jonathan even really had to warn him, like on the new moon, we talked about that new moon, like things be going on under that new moon. Y'all gotta pay attention. So ultimately, it ended up battle, battle, battle. Saul and Jonathan end up dying on the battlefield. It was a big problem with them. Like I said, we could deal with that because the story so intertwines. But that pretty much tells you how David went from shepherd from shepherd to soldier to outlaw. He had to be on the run from King Saul because Saul wanted to kill him. He had to be a mercenary because he basically had to like hunt down Philistines and all these other tribes of Gentiles. And Saul and Jonathan, sadly, Jonathan didn't get to be king. They both died on the battlefield, and so David then rose as a king, right? Now, even though David had killed as a soldier before, there's another designation, a separate designation of David as a killer, because David took a life out of covetousness, out of greed. Like, he saw this lady bathing out his window one day, and she was real beautiful. Her name was Bathsheba, and he pretty much was lusting after her. He wanted her. He was the king, and he had so many wives. But you know how it be sometimes, like, you just be like, just need one more. We don't know why. We as humans are like that sometimes, but sometimes you can't eat just one Lay's, and sometimes you can't just have one partner. He had many, but he saw this one, and it was one that belonged to another. And she was actually the wife of his homeboy, Uriah. And, when he found out, he basically pulled a shiesty move, a real salty move. He did, he sent his homeboy, his bestie, to the front lines because he knew that he would die. And then after he died, he would take his wife. And like, that's literally what he did. So he really messed up on that. And, he kind of had to pay for that. He was real contrite, but, God did punish him, the scriptures say. And his first child with her died. Okay. And from there, David really learned a lesson. And from that point on, basically, David really lived a contrite life as a servant of Yah. And he wrote the Psalms. And through the writing of the Psalms and through a lot of the prophesying that he prophesied several times about Yeshua, he rose to the stature of legend, in my opinion, and now icon. Okay? To the point where, a lot of times we have to be careful that we don't take David, and I put Paul in this camp too, that we don't take them as God, but we do accept their writings as inspired by God and used for our edification from the time it was written until this time and in the future. Just as me as a writer, I would want, if God inspired me to write something, I would want somebody to read it and say, okay, this is inspired by God, and this would help me in my life and in my walk with God, but this is not God. But as a prophet, who we categorize David as a prophet and myself as a prophet, if we say thus saith the Lord, then it's incumbent upon you to really think hard and long and be like, is this from God? I'm not God. The prophet is not God. But you gotta know within yourself and sharpen your discernment to decide whether or not words are from God. Okay? So moving on through the Psalty Psalms. You guys let me know if you enjoyed my breakdown of David introduction. And again, we could definitely do in-depth Bible studies. You guys know I love a good PowerPoint slide, or you'll learn that I do anyway. So, talk about David. So, to wrap up David, what was very unique about David in that time? Israel was just a rising nation, and Saul's faith, Saul as the first king, he was shaky in his relationship with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because he would go and seek outside help, see witches and stuff like that. He wasn't really 100 on point with Yah as he should have been as a king. But David, now when David stepped up, David was 100 down with Yah, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay. And yeah, he killed his best friend so he could get his wife, but we all make mistakes. I'm not downplaying what he did. Like, that was really like, hey, that was real shady. But he really, when he stepped up as king, his faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is concrete, and he led that way. He led with his faith. He was a servant king, and so his faith did set him apart from the other kings that Israel had. But what set David apart even more was David's willingness to be utterly contrite in heart. When you go through the Psalms, and you'll see as we go through, we're going to this will be part 1 of the Psalty Psalm series. And as we go through, and we'll probably do the rest of them, but we'll just see how this goes. I don't like to overcommit and underdeliver, so I've committed to Psalms 1 through 33, okay? And we'll see that David was both inquisitive about the ways of the Lord, and he was contrite, like to the furthest recesses of his soul, when he displeased the Most High. Like, he really sought it out. And this is something that I take away from the Psalms, the fact that David pretty much he pretty much got a flashlight and went inside and search within. And that's what you have to do, because that's the only way that you could root out sin, whether it's intentional sin, accidental sin, recurring sin. If you're just a wicked person, then you're not even seeking inside. You don't even really care. But as long as you're a person that's trying to do better, David is a great example, because this is somebody that, his hands was so bloody, even in service to the Lord, that he wasn't allowed to build the temple. His son Solomon is the one that was allowed to build the temple. So even though his hands were so bloody, it still said of David that because he did right in the eyes of the Lord, and he didn't turn aside from anything that the Lord commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Okay? 1 Kings 15:5. So the record even reflected that, except for this one matter, David pretty much was unblemished. Okay? He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. He didn't turn aside from anything that God commanded him. And David really did his best to be somebody that did a lot of self-checking. And that's something that we miss. We don't self-check. We don't check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. And that's something that's so important. That's what we are supposed to do. So David is just a really good example of that, okay? And like, kind of, how did David end up? Here's some free jewelry. So like, in David's day, 3,000 years ago, there was no more than I think that should be like 10,000 tons of gold on the planet. There was no more than 10,000 golds on the planet. So at the very least, based on what David owned, all the gold that David owned, at the end of his life, he had half or more of all the wealth in the world. Okay, based on what the scripture says is the amount of gold he had. So he was a real G, but he ended up with a lot of gold. That's the big G right there. And he kept his faith in the big G. You see what I'm saying? And so his end definitely was greater than his beginning. Okay, so that gives you an overview of who David is, who he was. And we, in certain circles, and I, especially in certain circles of belief culturally, as far as Rastafari, the I, David, we really hold David up to as a high standard, the father of Solomon, and the father of our Lord and Savior, Yeshua still. So we're going to start Psalms 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. And on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by the streams of water, that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. So let's take a beat right here. So blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. So this is 100% about the company you keep, okay? So walking not in the counsel of the wicked. Do not have a wicked friend. Do not have a friend who they're always on some evil time, some demon time, and then you sitting there getting advice from them. What advice do you think that you're gonna get? Like, no, okay? Don't do that. Don't do that. You will not be blessed. Nor stands in the way of sinners. Okay, so who do you congregate with? Who are you standing around with? When you go out, who are you with? Are you standing around in the way of sinners? Are you hanging around where, things are probably not so much on the up and up, Nor sit in the seat of scoffers. I've known people that, like, their whole conversation is just negative about other people. And I've also been that person, okay? You can't just be sitting around and every person you see, you just saying something negative about them, or every situation, you're just negative, scoffing after people, making fun of people. You cannot continue to keep the company of those people. You can't elevate that way, okay? What should you be doing? Your delight should be in the law of the Lord. This is a work in progress. You might not just be able to snap your fingers and just be like, oh, I could be this overnight. But you got to at least start thinking about it. Start thinking about being this type of person. Start looking around at the people that you're around and just being like, is this person just negative all the time? Is this person only talking about other people all the time? Am I only conversing with this person or conversating with this person, on negative stuff? Why? You got to try to cut that out, right? So your delight is in the law of the Lord, and on this law you meditate day and night. So the law of the Lord is like, try to meditate on goodly things. Try to think, who can I help today? What can I do today? Get up in the morning. Be thankful that you even just woke up. Just start off with that. Be thankful that you woke up. Be thankful that you had a good night's rest. Pray if you didn't. Okay? If you didn't have a good night's rest, just, lay in bed and just talk to God and be like, what's going on? I didn't sleep that good last night. You got to open up a channel of dialogue between you and Yah so that you can get those downloads, because he will talk to you. So meditate day and night. Do what you can to get some positive thoughts in there. Do your positive confessions. I call them positive confessions, affirmations. Meditate. Even if it's just a couple of seconds here and there, try to gain some traction with your own thoughts. What will this person be like? This person will be like a tree planted by the streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. So you'll be like a tree planted by the water. Well, then you know that the roots are getting fed, right? That yields its fruit in its season. So you will be like a tree that is like clockwork. When it's time to bear fruit, boom, it's right there. You don't get negatively affected by drought. You don't negatively get affected by pesticide. You don't negatively get affected by GMOs. You don't negatively get affected by Monsanto. You don't negatively get affected by chemtrails. You yield your fruit properly in its season, and your leaf does not wither. Well, guess what? In all that person does, they will prosper. But the wicked are not so. These people back here, these people right here, who company you got to try to get out of, yeah, they're not like that. What are they like? They are like the shaft that the wind drives away. So when you're harvesting wheat, you get the wheat, the nice healthy wheat. You guys all know what wheat looks like. And then you get the shaft, right? And the shaft, it just blows away. The wind just blows it. It doesn't have no foundation or nothing. It just blows away like a piece of tumbleweed, okay? That's what the wicked ends up like. So therefore, the wicked, they won't be able to stand upright. You see, when it comes time for the judgment, they won't be able to stand upright before God. The wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Okay? So you got two distinct camps right here. Psalms 1, okay? So David kicks it off, the way they put the scriptures together and the way they cataloged everything for us. It does kick it off with a bang, okay? Psalm 1 is short and sweet. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. So you take those actions right there and you bring it all down. The Lord knows the way of the righteous. The Lord knows that way. And he knows the end that he has in mind for you when you're on that side of the fence. But he also knows what he has in mind if you're on the other side of the fence, the wicked side of the fence. The way of the wicked will perish. Okay? So, how deep can your roots go? How deep can you get into this? How deeply can you be grounded in the Lord? Well, David likened it to a tree. David likened it to a tree that's planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. So how deep can those roots go? Here's some free jewelry. The shepherd's tree, which is native to the Kalahari Desert, has the deepest documented roots, more than 230 feet. Their depth was accidentally discovered by drillers. So you can go real deep. You can go real deep. Okay? Your roots can go really deep in Yah. And you can take it one little tiny step at a time. And that's what I did. And you can do it too. And we'll explore all of that on this channel. So I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of the Psalty Psalms series. This one ran a little bit longer. It'll go depending on the length of the chapter. But we are starting off once again with Psalms 1 through 33. And tonight we covered an overview of David as shepherd, soldier, outlaw, mercenary, king, killer, servant, legend, and icon. And we reviewed Psalms number 1. If you guys like it, you enjoyed kicking it, and you want to kick it with us some more, join us again on Kicking It with Soul. And remember, pride might fall, but humble never stumbles. So